some of my favorite games of all time have the worst start imaginable. That's what I want to talk about in this video. Incredible video games that for the first couple of hours are actually really hard to get through. But once you sludge through kind of a boring, unexciting intro level, a pot of gold is waiting for you at the end of that rainbow. And it is the most memorable, exciting, immersive video game experience that you can imagine. Now, before anybody leaves any horrible, mean comments on this video, I think it's important that I first define what horrible or bad means in this context. I don't think that the games I'm going to talk about are objectively bad from a gameplay mechanics or writing or game performance standpoint. However, I do think that when you look at the gameplay experience and the narrative and all of the game content in these games, what they have to offer, the first couple hours are questionable as to why is this the first thing that you introduce players to? Because after this point, things change so much. It gets so much better. So that's what I'm talking about here, okay? I have 3 titles that come to mind here, but first, I think there is an honorable mention that I would feel bad if I left it out, but it doesn't cleanly fit into the category of great game with bad start because the whole game is arguably bad for some people, and that is the Metal Gear Solid series. I have tried to introduce the Metal Gear Solid games to so many of my friends, but they bounce off of that game like they're made of flubber, and they can't be contained because it's full of cutscenes. The whole game is a goddamn movie. Every second, it's either a Kodak call or some crazy cinematic, which I love. I think I played through Metal Gear Solid 2 at least 15 times when it first came out. I just couldn't stop playing that game. And I was so obsessed with that. I went back and got Metal Gear Solid 1 so I could do that. When 3 came out, I faked being sick for school so I could stay home. Those games are some of my favorite games of all time, but I understand they're not going to be for everybody. And when you first introduce somebody to Metal Gear Solid 2, I should go back and look at the ratio of scripted material to gameplay for the first hour of that game. But I would not be surprised if in the first hour, after hitting new game, if you only get like 15 minutes of actual gameplay. So for that reason, I think Metal Gear Solid is worth mentioning here. The first game on the list is one that I think most people will think of, and that is Red Dead Redemption 2. I love the snow level and the intro of Red Dead Redemption 2. However, it is so different than the rest of the game. And when people think of Rockstar games, they think of intense action and violence and big open world settings, and that is not the intro for Red Dead 2. I like the intro to Red Dead 2. I think that it sets expectations and the tone for that game and for the story all the way through. But I completely understand why so many people will hop into that game thinking that they're about to rob some train in the first 10 minutes, and they are mistaken because that's not what that is. Number 2 on my list is a game that I have also tried to introduce to a lot of different friends, but because the first hour of this game is so different than the rest of the game, they don't always make it through. And that bums me out because this is a fantastic isometric turn-based RPG, and the game is Divinity Original Sin 2. I don't know whose idea it was to put the first part of that game on the boat. I don't think that's the best place to be. It's so different. It's so dark and confined, and it feels so small in scale compared to the rest of that game. Once you land on the Act 1, like prison island there, the whole world opens up and you realize what you're actually playing. But I have seen people who aren't used to playing RPGs really have a hard time, and they really stumble through that ship, like not knowing what they're supposed to do. And I think that because the scale of the game feels so small, they're not that interested in exploring. But once those same players got to the island and they got off the ship, I could hear in their voice, oh, this is cool. Like there was so much enthusiasm there because the world suddenly opened up and they realized what was going on. I know that intro level does not take an hour or 2 for a lot of people, but for newer players to that genre, it can definitely take longer than you think. And number 3 on the list is a game that I know a lot of people didn't finish. If you look at the global Steam achievements, like 22% of players have actually beaten this game. And that is The Witcher 3. I think a lot of people went into The Witcher like I did. They read all these reviews and they have seen how highly this game is talked about online. It is discussed as though it is absolute perfection in video game form. And I don't think that's the case. It certainly has its flaws. I think that it is a solid 93 out of 100. Like, it is an A. It is an A title, but there are some issues there. And one of the issues, I think, is the first few hours. I think it took me about 4 or 5 tries to actually get into a rhythm and finish that game. It was during COVID when everything was shut down over the pandemic and I had nothing else to do. And I told myself, I'm not going to do any side quests. I'm just going to focus on the main story. I'm going to play the game on the easiest difficulty possible. And I'm going to sludge through this thing and I'm going to finish it, because it's always bothered me that I have been critical of this game while also not finishing it. So I got to fix that. And I did it, but it took 3 to 5 hours, I think, of getting through those main story quest lines to actually reach a point to where I was like, oh, okay, I care about this now. This is cool. I like this story. I like these characters. I care about the world that I'm in, but it took a while to get there. If any of the games that I have talked about in this video are titles that you have attempted to play and then you bounced off of, please try to go back and play them. They are absolutely incredible experiences, but take it from someone who had a hard time getting into them. The first 2, 3, 4, 5 hours might not be the best, but if you can work your way through that like a miner digging through the rocks, there is a giant cave of diamonds just beyond the wall that you're about to break through.